Hey there, and welcome back to Jake Bakes. I'm feeling like I really want to do something a little bit fruity, a little bit fun, and full of wine. This week I'm thinking of doing a poached pear tart, which is this really creamy, delicious, sort of the best of both worlds of fresh fruit, warm custardy pie, and a nice sweet crust. So to begin, we're gonna go ahead and grab just a few basic ingredients. We have some flour, about a cup in 2/3. We have 2/3 cup of just granulated sugar or caster sugar. And then we have 1 medium egg, and then just a pinch of salt, and then my butter, which is still in the freezer. Thank you. Butter. The butter was in the freezer because when you're making a pie crust, to get it really, that flaky, super delicious, crumbly pie crust, you want it to be as cold as possible because you want to develop the least amount of gluten as possible. Freshly frozen and cold butter is going to be perfect for this. About 1 stick of unsalted butter. And then the secret ingredient to making just, I think, the most delectably buttery, rich pie crust or tart crust for this is almond flour. So I got about a 1/3 cup of almond flour, but it has this really wonderfully rich, decadent, silky flavor to it. What we're gonna do is get the flour in here, and I'm gonna add the almond flour, a pinch of salt, and then I'm gonna add the 2/3 cup of sugar. So once all the dry ingredients are sort of in there, I'm gonna just take my hands and sort of get them all together. So now what I'm gonna do is take that butter, and I've cut it up into little cubes. What we're gonna wanna do, just kind of get in there and pinch it and roll it around in there. And really, you can do this with a pastry cutter as well, but this, just pushing it around like this, is gonna coat each one of those flour grains. We're now to the stage what we want, but what we're looking for is the stage that looks like breadcrumbs. Once we get to this stage, we wanna add our egg in. It's good to always sort of whisk your egg in first, so I'm gonna do that. Just break up the yolk, give it a little bit of a swirl. So I'm just gonna go ahead, set that on to the side, and then add that yolk. Made a little well for that, and now you're just gonna toss it with your fingers until that egg becomes really well incorporated. Once this is like really well incorporated, you don't wanna mess with it too much because what we're not aiming for this time is to build gluten. We don't wanna have that big gluten structure. And it may look like, how are you gonna roll this out? But that's okay, because what we're gonna do now, that exact thing. We're just gonna gather this all together. And it's gonna crack, it's gonna seem too crumbly. But what's gonna help is that right now we're gonna scoot it down to a little bit of a disc so that after we put it in the fridge, which is our next step, it's gonna be nice and cold. It's gonna be really firm, but when we roll it out, this is gonna help it. It's gonna solidify that butter some, and we'll be all set to go in about a half hour. While that's chilling, we're gonna get the alcohol out and have some real fun. All right, so now we get to do the fun part with the booze. You're gonna put some liquid in a little pot and get it to a nice gentle boil, add some spices, add the pears, and it's gonna be simple. How do you work? So we're gonna use about 500 milliliters. As long as you save some for yourself, you're good. Actually pour myself a little bit. And then just go ahead and add that right to the pot. So right now I'm seeing I might need a little bit more, but I'm gonna add the water in first and then sort of gauge where I wanna go from there. So 500 milliliters of just cool tap water. You want your pears fully, basically submerged. You don't want them sitting on that hot bottom. Now we get to add the fun flavors. I'm gonna wanna add about 2 cinnamon sticks. I'm gonna pull out a whole vanilla bean. The vanilla bean, what you're gonna use is actually the little bit of insides of it. There are lots of little seeds in there. So what I'm gonna do is just lay this down and then cut this in half. And as soon as you open that up, you can see there's tons and tons of little seeds in there. And then the final thing about the zest or the peel of 1 orange. So I'm gonna toss that in there as well. All right, so then the last thing that we have is about 1 cup of sugar. Ultimately, when this all reduces down, you want a thick, delicious syrup. What I've done is just peeled these pears. I peeled 4. So what I'm gonna do is just take my first pear, just cut the bottom off. You wanna get that bottom section, this little butt of the pear, and then just the top as well. So then I'm gonna cut this in half, and then I'm gonna quarter it. So I'm gonna stir the poaching. I see that we've got a little bit of a boil going with the syrup at the bottom. Just wanna make sure that we're not burning any sugar. Now we have to core the pears. It's just like an apple. You want to see sort of this section here removed. So what I'm gonna do is just slip the pears in. We're gonna let those go for a little bit. And while that's going, we're gonna get everything ready to make the cream that's gonna set everything in there and we're gonna fill the tart with. Alrighty, so the pears have been poaching for about 15 to 20 minutes. We can pierce them with a fork pretty well. They've plumped up a lot. So I'm gonna pull them out and we're gonna set them in here to cool until we're ready to handle them again. Just look at that, that is just unbelievably good. And what we're gonna do is set these off to the side, let these cool a bit. And we're gonna reduce this liquid down. We want it to be a thick syrup so that we can glaze the tart when it comes out. So I'm gonna take this off and get this to poach, or to reduce a little bit longer. We're gonna go ahead and start on our cream. The cream is gonna be what fills the tart and what gives it sort of that body. And for that, what we're gonna wanna do is heat some milk. Gonna get 2 cups of milk. We're just gonna warm this through. We don't want it to get to a rolling boil by any means. And to that milk, I'm going to add some of the more orange peel, and then we're gonna add a half of a vanilla bean. What we're gonna do is split this one in half, and then down the middle. Put that in the cream, and let that sort of go for a little bit. What we wanna do is get the eggs in here and ready to go. So we're gonna use 2 eggs, but we're just gonna use the yolks and 1 whole egg. And what I'm gonna do is add the sugar. We're gonna use a half a cup of sugar. What we're gonna do is whisk this together. We wanna have it form sort of a paste. It's gonna make the custard sort of thicken up really, really nicely. What we can do is add cornstarch. About a tablespoon or so of cornstarch. You want it to thicken up. Just by adding that cornstarch, we've got it already sort of almost becoming syrupy, which is good. That's what we want. I'm just gonna make sure this is good. And the one final thing I forgot was salt. You can't have sweets without salt. This is looking good. It's just starting to see some bubbles. So what you're gonna do, while whisking like this, you're gonna stream in about half of the milk really slowly. Alrighty, half of that's in there, so that's good. And what's nice if you've got a glass bowl or something that you can feel the temperature in, because you want the eggs to be pretty high temperature. We can set this aside now. We're gonna add this back to the hot pan and sort of thicken it up a little bit more. Fun fact, this, if you were to churn this, you'd get ice cream. The last thing we need to do with the poaching syrup is to sieve it and sort of filter out all of the orange peel, the cinnamon sticks, all of the good stuff. Put this over a nice heavy container so that when you pour it in there, you're not pouring in something hot and it just explodes everywhere. While we're at it, we're gonna go ahead and sieve our custard. So I'm gonna pour it through here. And to get it through, all I do is this, and it comes through. The final thing that we have to do to get ready is cut our pears up and arrange them in the tart, and then we get this in the oven. We went ahead and blind baked our tart, so it's been cooked once, just really briefly so that it gets rid of any of the soggy bottom problems that we may run into. I'm gonna preheat my oven before I do this so that way it's ready to go to 320 degrees. While I'm cutting these, I'm just gonna, instead of put these and handling these 100 times, I'm gonna put them right in my tart tin exactly how I want them. Ultimately, during this whole thing, it's been about 3 recipes in one. Think of it in tiny little chunks. That's how I have to do it, at least, because it would get to me and I would never bake anything. To fill this in as much as possible. Beautiful. Check that out. Now we're gonna pour the custard over. You want it to be really pourable, but this should still do just fine. It just gives me less time in the oven. And this is gonna go in the oven for about, I'm gonna check it at about 15 minutes. It could take up to 25. All right, so now it's time to grab our wonderful tart out of the oven and see what's happened. What we have here is perfect. You want it to have a little bit, see how it wobbled a little bit? You want that, that's good. So now we get to do the fun part, which is sort of use all of those elements we used from the poaching syrup, from everything, and put it on here and decorate it to make it just absolutely gorgeous. I saved a couple of the cinnamon sticks, which are gonna be fantastic on here. I did save a couple of vanilla beans too, so I'm gonna see what these look like on there. Grab that glaze, or that reduced down poaching syrup, which is so delicious. I'm gonna glaze this. Now we get to the fun part. If you can see, I don't know if you can, the pears are just perfectly set in there, just absolutely deliciously. All right. You should really come here and taste this. So as much as I'd like to sit here and just chow down on this all by myself, it's best shared with friends. So please like this video, share it with your friends and coworkers, and subscribe to our channel. We'll see you here next time on Jake Bakes.